I parked the company van in the service area, grabbed my tool bag, and rode up. Pam opened the door before I finished knocking. She looked like someone used to knowing exactly what belonged in a room. That was honestly my first thought. Her apartment looked organized without looking empty. Clean lines, warm colors, furniture that probably had names instead of model numbers. What stood out was the way she looked directly at me like she was already deciding whether I knew what I was doing. "You're Jason?" "That depends. Is the sensor still acting possessed?" She smiled. "So technicians admit that happens?" "No. Officially, technology is never haunted. Customers are." That got a laugh. "Good start." She showed me the hallway. The sensor sat above a doorway near an air vent. I opened the housing, checked the bracket, and found movement almost immediately. The mount was just loose enough to shift slightly. Then I checked the zone. The airflow from the vent was crossing the edge of the detection area, and the sensitivity settings were older than the current recommendation. So, unlike a lot of strange service calls, this one had an actual answer. I tightened the bracket, adjusted the angle, updated the panel software, recalibrated the zone, then walked through the hallway several times while watching the readings. Pam stayed nearby the entire time. Most homeowners disappear after showing me the problem. Pam watched. "What does that number mean?" she asked. "Signal strength. And that? Sensitivity. And the green light. That means everything is currently behaving." She leaned against the wall. "You sound disappointed." "I like finding problems." "That seems unhealthy." "It's literally my job." She smiled again. The strange thing was that she asked good questions. Not the usual questions people ask when they really mean, "Is this going to cost me money?" She wanted to know what caused the issue. I explained the bracket, airflow, and calibration. So it wasn't imagining something? No. The sensor was reacting to real conditions, just not useful ones. She looked at the little device. "I feel slightly bad for blaming it." "Don't. It doesn't have feelings." "You seem very sure." "I've worked with this model before." When I finished, I ran another test. Clean. The green status light stayed steady. I packed up my tools and handed her the company card. "If it happens again, call the number there. They'll have the report from today." She looked at the card, then at me. "Do you ever take private jobs?" I paused. "What kind?" "Security stuff. Small things. I like knowing someone reliable." There was nothing inappropriate in the way she said it, but something about the question made me more careful. "I only work through the company. Strict rules. Mostly insurance. Also, my manager enjoys paperwork more than any human should." She nodded. "Fair enough." I left thinking she was interesting. That was all. At least that was what I told myself. The next morning, dispatch put another ticket on my tablet. Unit 1407. Same apartment. Customer reports hallway sensor blinking unexpectedly. I opened the event history before driving over. Nothing. No activation. No communication issue. No fault. I stared at the screen for a few seconds. Mike was sitting across from me at the office counter eating something that looked like it had been designed to survive a construction site. "What?" he asked. "Nothing." That's usually when something is definitely something. I showed him the ticket. He shrugged. "Go check it." So I did. Pam opened the door wearing a dark blouse and black pants, like she was getting ready to leave for work. "Back already," she said. "You sound surprised." Should I pretend I'm not? That would make the service record more exciting. She let me in. I checked the sensor. Perfect. Checked the panel. Perfect. Checked the wireless readings. Perfect. I even tested the VIN again. Nothing had changed. "You said it blinked?" I asked. "I thought it did." "When?" "Last night." "Did the panel show anything?" "No." "Did you get a notification?" "No." I looked at her. She looked back. Then she smiled slightly. "Maybe I imagined it." "Possible." "You're very comforting." "I fix equipment. Emotional reassurance is a separate department." That time she laughed longer. And somehow I stayed another 15 minutes. We started talking about the weird calls I got. Dogs setting off motion zones. People forgetting their own entry codes. A guy who blamed his smart lock because he kept pulling the door before it finished releasing. Pam told me she worked in commercial interior design. "That explains the apartment," I said. "What does that mean?" "Everything looks intentional." That's either a compliment or an accusation. Still deciding. When I finally left, I knew there had been nothing wrong. 2 days later, another ticket appeared. Same unit. Same customer. Same sensor. The note said, "Same issue. Prefer Jason," smiley face. Mike read it over my shoulder. He slowly looked at me. You know the panel isn't broken. I know. Then this is no longer a security problem. I'm aware. Are you? I took the tablet and headed for the van. Pam answered wearing jeans, a cream cardigan, and the expression of someone who had been caught doing something she planned to deny. Censor again? I asked. That's what the ticket says. I set my bag down. This time I barely needed 5 minutes. Everything was clean. No faults. No events. No signal drops. The system was doing exactly what I had told it to do. I closed the panel. Pam. Yes. The system is fine. She nodded. I know. That stopped me. You know? Yes. I stared at her. Then why do you keep calling? For once, she didn't have a quick answer. She looked toward the window, then back at me. I like it when you knock. I had dealt with broken sensors, confused homeowners, contractors blaming wiring they had damaged themselves, and one office manager who believed the keypad could hear him. None of that prepared me for that sentence. Oh, very professional response. Pam looked embarrassed now. Not playful. I realized that sounded ridiculous. No, just unexpected. You kept coming. I was assigned the tickets. You accepted them. That was harder to argue with. I picked up my tool bag. I can't keep writing service reports when there's nothing to service. Her expression changed immediately. Fair. No argument. No attempt to push. Then she asked, would coffee be less complicated? I knew what she meant, and I wanted to say yes. That was the problem. You're still on my account. So that's a no? For now. She nodded once. Understood. Back at the office, I requested that future maintenance for her building be moved to another technician. Mike saw the change. That seems like a lot of paperwork for someone you supposedly don't want to see. I never said I didn't want to see her. Mike leaned back. Oh, this is better than I thought. I ignored him. For the next few days, I stayed busy. Door contacts. A bad access reader at a small office. 2 camera resets. One homeowner who had changed internet providers and somehow believed his old password should still work. Normal problems. Measurable problems. Then, Thursday afternoon, my phone buzzed while I was sitting in the van finishing a service report. Unknown number. I opened the message. Coffee. No alarm panel. No invoice. I stared at it longer than necessary. Then another message appeared. Pam, by the way, in case you have several former clients inviting you for coffee. I laughed inside the van. And this time, there was no service ticket telling me what to do. Pam picked the cafe, which made sense because I had spent the previous week proving I could choose parking spaces and replacement sensors, not coffee shops. It was a bright little place in Lawrenceville with big front windows, small tables, and enough plants hanging around to make me wonder who was responsible for keeping all of them alive. She was already there when I walked in. Seeing her outside the apartment changed something immediately. No hallway sensor. No company polo. No tablet in my hand. No reason for either of us to pretend I was there because a device needed attention. Pam looked up from her coffee. You came. You sent very clear instructions. No alarm panel. No invoice. I appreciate detailed service notes. She smiled and pointed to the chair across from her. I sat down. For a few seconds, we both looked slightly uncomfortable, which I actually liked. It made the whole thing feel real. Then Pam said, I should probably confess something. The second service call was unnecessary. She narrowed her eyes. You knew? The event log knew. That feels unfair. Machines are difficult witnesses. She took a drink. Fine. The second call was unnecessary. What about the third? She looked toward the window. Embarrassing. And the fourth? We are not counting that. There wasn't a fourth. Good. Then my reputation survives. I laughed. That was when the awkwardness finally disappeared. We talked for almost 2 hours. Pam told me more about her work. She designed commercial spaces for companies that wanted their offices to look expensive without looking like they were trying to look expensive. Apparently, that was harder than it sounded. She showed me pictures of a medical office she had helped redesign. I looked at one photo. That chair costs more than my refrigerator. That chair is also more comfortable than your refrigerator. You haven't met my refrigerator. She laughed. Then she asked what the strangest part of my job was. People, not the systems. Systems usually admit when they're failing. She looked at me for a second. That sounds personal. It wasn't supposed to. You do that a lot. What? Say something interesting and then pretend it wasn't. I leaned back. You've known me for about 4 hours total. 4 very informative hours. I changed the subject. She noticed. She let me. That was another thing I liked about her. She could push without turning everything into a test. Eventually, the conversation moved into why we were both sitting there in the first place. Pam had been married before. She didn't make it dramatic. She just said the relationship had slowly turned into two people managing the same life. Bills got paid. Appointments got remembered. Meals happened. Nothing was technically wrong. And somehow that became the problem. We got very efficient, she said. By the end, we could organize an entire month without having one conversation that mattered. I understood that more than I wanted to. My last girlfriend had told me something similar about myself. She said I was dependable and kind, but every time something emotional happened, I tried to fix the practical part and assumed the rest would follow. Pam listened without interrupting. So you repair things. That is technically the job. I mean people. I try not to. You absolutely try. I looked at her. You invited a technician for coffee because you invented 3 service problems. 2. 3. We agreed not to count 1. We both smiled. Then she became more serious. You know people are going to notice. I knew exactly what she meant. She was established in her career. She owned furniture that probably arrived with care instructions. She had already built one full adult life and changed it. I was still deciding whether I wanted to take an advanced certification because it would mean more commercial work and fewer residential calls. We're drinking coffee, I said. That isn't what I mean. I know. She folded her hands around the cup. You're younger. True. Enough younger that people are going to have opinions. People have opinions about parking spaces. That's a very convenient answer. It's still true. Pam shook her head. I'm serious, Jason. So I stopped joking. She asked whether I wanted a family someday. I told her I didn't have a clear answer. She asked whether the difference in where we were in life bothered me. I told her I'd thought about it. Then I asked whether she was worried about what she wanted or what everyone else would think she should want. That one landed. She looked down at her coffee. Both. At least she answered. When we left the cafe, I didn't kiss her. I didn't touch her hand. I just walked her to her car. Then I said, dinner Friday? She looked surprised. You're asking me? I thought that was how this worked. You said no last time. You were still a client. And now someone else gets to deal with your imaginary sensor problems. She smiled. Friday works. I chose a small Italian place near the river. Nothing fancy. Good food. Closed tables. The kind of restaurant where you could actually hear the person sitting across from you. Pam looked different again. Not because of what she wore. Because she seemed less guarded. We talked about stupid things for the first half of dinner. Bad office coffee. My brother borrowing tools and never returning them. A client of hers who changed the wall color 7 times. Then Pam told me something I remembered. She said after her marriage ended, she became very good at making her life look full. Work, restaurants, projects, friends, trips when she had time. Her apartment always looked ready for someone to visit. Then she said, my apartment has everything except someone who notices when I'm not there. I didn't have a clever answer, so I didn't give one. I just said, I'd notice. She looked at me for a long second. After dinner, we walked along the river. The air was cold, but the sky was clear, and the city lights were coming on across the water. Pam put her hands in her coat pockets. I looked at her. Do you still feel safer when I'm around? She smiled slightly. That was never really about the alarm. I stopped walking. So did she. I gave her enough time to change her mind. She didn't. I kissed her. Nothing dramatic. Nothing rushed. Just a clear decision from both of us. After that, dating Pam became surprisingly normal. We went to a farmer's market one Saturday and argued about tomatoes. She took me to the design showroom where she worked sometimes and explained why lighting could make an expensive room look cheap. I told her half the fixtures looked impossible to service. That is because nobody designs for technicians. I've noticed. She came to my apartment for dinner. I cooked. She looked around my living room and said, you own exactly enough furniture to prove you live here. That sounds efficient. That is not a compliment. Another weekend, we walked downtown, bought groceries, and spent 20 minutes debating which coffee to buy. Pam paid sometimes. I paid sometimes. Nobody kept track. I like that. I didn't want to become the guy constantly fixing things for her. She didn't want to become the woman constantly giving me access to a nicer life. We were just dating. A few weeks in, she asked whether I was seeing anyone else. No. Because you don't have time? Because I'm seeing you. She watched my face carefully. So this is exclusive? If you want it to be. I do. Then yes. She smiled. But I noticed something change after that. Just slightly. Like the moment a system switches from test mode into actual operation. The stakes became different. Still, things stayed good. One evening after several weeks together, we were at Pam's apartment after dinner. No invented service issue. No excuse. Just us. She stood near the kitchen counter and looked unusually nervous. "If this becomes complicated tomorrow," she said, "are you going to act like tonight was a mistake?" I knew exactly what she was asking. "No." You answered fast. "Because I know the answer." She waited. I said, "Complicated isn't the same as regretted." That was enough. The rest of that night stayed between us. The next morning was what surprised Pam. Nothing became strange. I made coffee. Bad coffee, according to her. She stole half my breakfast anyway. She complained that I had left one cabinet open. I told her that was an intentional ventilation feature. She laughed. It felt ordinary. Easy. Like I had been waking up in that apartment longer than one morning. And I could tell that scared her. Not then. Not enough that I could point to it. But over the next few days, her messages got shorter. She took longer to answer. Then she canceled dinner. "Work," she said. That could have been true. I didn't push. Then another day passed. And another. By the end of the week, I was looking at my phone the same way I looked at a panel showing a green status light when I knew something had changed somewhere behind it. Pam didn't disappear all at once. That would have been easier. Instead, she became slightly less available every day. Her messages went from full conversations to short replies. She stopped sending random pictures from work. She canceled dinner on Wednesday, then suggested maybe the weekend, then never picked a time. Nothing she did was rude. That almost made it worse. If she had simply said she was done, I could have dealt with it. I understand clear signals. This wasn't clear. So I did what I usually do when I don't understand something. I watched the pattern. On Friday afternoon, I was replacing a bad door contact in a dentist's office when my phone buzzed. "Pam, can you come over tonight?" No explanation. I stared at the message. Mike was working in the next room. He walked past me carrying a ladder. "You planning to answer that?" I looked up. "You monitor my phone now?" "No. You've been staring at it like it owes you money." I put the phone away. "I'm handling it." "Sure." That was Mike's favorite response when he thought I was doing the exact opposite. I finished the job, completed the report, returned the van to the shop, then drove to Pam's place in my own car. The building felt different when I entered it now. The first few times, I had carried a tool bag. Then I had arrived for dates. Now I had no idea why I was there. Pam opened the door. She looked tired. Not messy. Not dramatic. Just like someone who had spent too much time thinking. "Hey," she said. "Hey." She stepped aside. I walked in. The hallway sensor was still there above the doorway. Green light. Working perfectly. I almost laughed at that. Pam went into the living room. I followed. She didn't offer coffee. That told me more than I wanted it to. She sat on the end of the couch. I stayed standing for a second, then sat in the chair across from her. She looked at me. I thought I could keep this light. I leaned back. "You never seemed light." That got half a smile. Then it disappeared. "I mean us." "I know." She rubbed her thumb against the edge of her sleeve. I didn't expect this to become important. There it was. Finally. Something I could actually respond to. So it became important. "Yes." That sounds like a strange reason to cancel dinner. "It's not dinner." "Then tell me what it is." She took a moment. "You're in a different place in your life." We already talked about that. We talked about it when we were drinking coffee and pretending it was theoretical. I wasn't pretending. Pam looked at me. I was. That bothered me. Not because she had doubts. Because apparently she had been collecting them without telling me. She continued. "You might want things later that I can't give you." "Like what?" "You know what." "No. I want you to say it." She looked irritated now. Maybe that was useful. A different kind of future. That explains nothing. "Jason, I'm serious." She stood and walked toward the window. "You're still building your career. You have choices you haven't even made yet. You could change cities. You could decide you want a completely different life. So could you. That's not the same." "Why?" She turned around. "Because I've already lived more of mine." There it was. The actual problem. Not dinner. Not work. Not my apartment. Time. Pam looked down for a second. "I keep thinking eventually you're going to realize this was exciting because it was different." I stood too. "And I keep thinking eventually you're going to decide I was entertaining because I was different." She blinked. That surprised her. Good. Apparently, she wasn't the only person allowed to be insecure. "I don't think that." I don't think what you're saying either. That doesn't make the difference disappear. I'm not asking it to disappear. She shook her head. I care about you more than I planned to. Again, strange argument against dating me. I'm trying to be responsible. That sentence did it. Not because she meant anything bad by it. Because suddenly I understood what she was doing. She had already made the decision for both of us. She had just invited me over to hear it. You want to stop seeing me? Pam looked toward the floor. I think we should. Do you want to? That's not the same question. Yes, it is. No, Jason. Sometimes wanting something doesn't mean it's smart. I looked at her. You called me because you didn't want to censor deciding whether you were safe. Don't let a number decide what I want. Her eyes came back to mine. You're 28, and still old enough to answer my own questions. I'm trying to think ahead. For me. For both of us. That's the problem. She went quiet. I walked closer, but stopped with plenty of space between us. If you don't want me, say that. Pam didn't answer. I mean it. Say you don't want this, and I'll leave. She looked uncomfortable. But don't tell me you want me, and then call leaving responsible. Her jaw tightened. That's not fair. It's exactly fair. You don't know how you'll feel 5 years from now. Neither do you. I know myself. So do I. You can't possibly know everything you'll want. Of course I can't. I almost laughed. That's not how being alive works. For a second, neither of us said anything. Then Pam sat down again. Her voice was quieter when she spoke. I'm scared I'm going to become important to you in a way that limits you. You already are important to me. That made her look away. And I'm scared, she said, that one day you're going to look at me and realize you gave up options you should have had. That would be my responsibility. You say that now. Yes, because now is when I get to make decisions. She covered her face briefly with one hand, then lowered it. I need some space. I didn't answer immediately. That was the part of me that wanted to keep talking until the problem had a clean conclusion. Ask enough questions. Find the cause. Fix the setting. Run the test again. But Pam wasn't a panel, and this wasn't something I could recalibrate. So I nodded. Okay. She looked surprised. Okay. You asked for space. I didn't expect you to agree that fast. That doesn't mean I like it. I picked up my jacket. At the door, she followed me. The hallway sensor showed green. Of course it did. I looked at Pam. I won't keep knocking. That hit her. I could see it. But she nodded. Then I left. And write in the comments, what would make you hesitate more? A big age difference, dating someone from a completely different life, fear of getting attached, or worrying what other people would think. The next 2 weeks were aggressively normal. I worked. A restaurant had an access reader that randomly rejected employee cards. A homeowner had a door sensor installed too far from the magnet. Another client kept receiving notifications because somebody had turned on a setting they didn't understand. I fixed all of it. Pam and I didn't speak. I didn't check her building account. I didn't drive past her place. I didn't invent reasons to contact her. For once, there was nothing technical I could hide behind. Mike noticed I was quieter. He waited about 4 days before saying anything. We were eating lunch in the van between calls. He opened a bag of chips. You respected the door. I looked at him. What? You respected the door. Now let her decide whether to open it. That's supposed to be advice? It's all you're getting. He ate another chip. I hated when Mike accidentally made sense. So I went back to work. What I didn't know was that Pam was doing the same thing. Going to work. Coming home. Meeting people. Keeping busy. And according to what she told me later, that was when she finally understood what she had actually been afraid of. Her apartment was still beautiful. Still quiet. Still organized. But now she knew exactly what was missing. Not attention. Not flirting. Not the novelty of dating someone younger. Me. My questions about her day. My terrible coffee. My opinions about expensive light fixtures. The way I opened the wrong cabinet every time I looked for a glass. 2 weeks after I left her apartment, I was home on a Saturday afternoon putting together a small shelf I had been ignoring for months. Someone knocked. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door. Pam stood there. Jeans. Jacket. Hands in her pockets. No service ticket. No excuse. She looked nervous. Then she said, I finally figured out what was wrong with the system. I looked past her into the hallway. You don't have a system here. Exactly. I stared at her. She gave me a small, embarrassed smile. I kept calling because I was lonely. I said nothing. She continued. And I pulled away because I stopped feeling lonely, and that scared me more. That was probably the most direct thing Pam had ever said to me. I still think about the age difference, she said. I still worry. I still don't know what everything looks like years from now. Neither do I. I know. She stepped closer. But I don't need guarantees. I waited. I want you, she said. I want this. And I want to stop trying to protect both of us from decisions we haven't even made. I leaned against the doorframe. If we do this, no fake emergencies. Pam nodded. Agreed. No disappearing because you decide you're protecting me. Agreed. If something is wrong, you tell me. I will. I looked at her. You understand that means actually saying it? She gave me a look. I came to your apartment, didn't I? Strong first attempt. She smiled. Then I stepped aside. Pam walked in. I closed the door behind her. A minute later, she was standing in my living room looking at the unfinished shelf. She pointed at it. Is that stable? Absolutely not. Finally, something you can fix. I laughed. Then she came closer, put her arms around me, and kissed me. This time there was no client account, no service call, no excuse hidden inside a practical problem. Just two people deciding that being scared wasn't the same thing as needing to leave. Getting back together didn't fix everything. It just meant we stopped pretending uncertainty was the same thing as a reason to leave. That turned out to be much more useful. The next few months were less dramatic than the first few weeks, which I took as a good sign. Pam met Mike and his wife, Rachel, over dinner one Saturday. Mike behaved for almost 11 minutes. Then Pam mentioned the first service call. Mike looked at me. So you're telling the story? No. He told me the panel was fine after the second call. Pam looked at him. It was. Mike nodded slowly. And you called again. I did. He pointed at me. And he went. I was assigned. Mike smiled. If the alarm is fake, but you keep accepting the ticket, maybe stop blaming the customer. Rachel told him to stop enjoying himself so much. Pam laughed harder than I expected. That helped. She had been nervous before dinner. I could tell because she changed her earrings twice before we left her apartment, then claimed the first pair had been uncomfortable. I didn't mention that I had watched her wear them for 4 hours at a work event without complaint. A few weeks later, I met Lisa. Lisa was one of Pam's closest friends and roughly her age. She worked in consulting and had the kind of expression that made you feel like she had already reviewed your application before you sat down. The first 10 minutes were polite. Then Pam went to order another round of coffee. Lisa looked directly at me. So, there are very few good conversations that begin with one word like that. So I said, you know she thinks this could go badly. I know. And you? I think anything can go badly. That's not an answer. It's the one I have. Lisa watched me. Then she asked whether Pam was some kind of phase for me. I almost laughed, but she was serious. No. You understand why I'm asking. Yeah. Do you? I looked toward the counter where Pam was talking to the barista. She worries I'll wake up one day and decide I should be somewhere else. Lisa waited. I worry she'll wake up one day and decide that for me. That changed her expression. Just slightly. When Pam came back, Lisa moved on to another subject. Later Pam asked what we had talked about. Interior design. She gave me a look. You know nothing about interior design. Exactly. Very short conversation. She knew I was lying. She let it go. A month later, Lisa invited both of us to dinner. I considered that progress. My family was easier. My younger brother mostly cared that Pam laughed at his jokes and didn't treat him like a kid. My mother noticed the age difference immediately. Of course she did. She waited until Pam was helping carry dishes into the kitchen before asking me quietly, "Does she treat you well?" "Yes." My mother nodded. "Good." That was it. No speech. No interrogation. I appreciated that more than I told her. The outside world was occasionally less subtle. Pam took me to a design event at a renovated hotel downtown. I wore a jacket that actually required ironing. She wore a dark green dress and somehow knew almost everybody in the room. For the first half hour, I mostly listened. Then a man Pam knew from another firm walked over. He shook her hand, then mine. "Oh," he said, looking at me. "New assistant?" There was a pause. I could have corrected him. Pam did it first. "He's my boyfriend." Simple. No hesitation. No joke to soften it. The guy apologized and moved on. I looked at her. "What?" "Nothing." "You're smiling." "I'm not." "You absolutely are." I was. Because months earlier, Pam had worried about strangers having opinions. Now she didn't even give one the chance to matter. That stayed with me. Our relationship got more ordinary after that. Not boring. Ordinary. There's a difference. We argued about small things. She hated that I left tools on the kitchen counter. I hated that she bought decorative storage boxes that made it impossible to tell where anything actually was. She liked making weekend plans in advance. I liked waking up Saturday and deciding based on whether I wanted pancakes. Once, she moved a charger I used every day because, according to her, it ruined the line of the console table. I stared at her. It charges my phone. It can charge your phone inside the drawer. Then I can't see it. That's the point. We disagreed about that charger for 3 days. Nobody left. That became important too. Around the same time, my work started changing. I had been thinking about advanced access control training for a while. Commercial systems were more complicated than the residential calls I usually handled. More network configuration. More planning. Bigger buildings. More responsibility. Also fewer conversations with homeowners who believed replacing batteries was a conspiracy. Pam encouraged me to do it. Not by making plans for me. She just asked one night, "Why haven't you signed up?" "I'm busy." "You've been saying that for 4 months." "I am busy." "Jason." I looked at her. That sounded exactly like something I do. Yes. I signed up the next morning. A few months later, I had the certification and started handling larger commercial jobs. Then my supervisor gave me lead responsibility on a small office conversion. Nothing huge, but it was mine. I managed the installation, coordinated 2 other techs, and handled the final walkthrough. When I told Pam, she smiled. "Look at you. Please don't make it weird." I wasn't going to. "You were definitely going to." I was going to say I'm proud of you. That shut me up. She was. And I liked hearing it. Pam changed too. Her apartment slowly stopped looking like a place prepared for a magazine photograph. More people came over. Lisa. Co-workers. My brother once. Mike and Rachel twice. Pam started leaving design books stacked on the coffee table instead of putting them away immediately. There were grocery lists on the counter. 2 different coffee mugs drying beside the sink. My jacket on the back of a chair. Her place started looking less perfect. She liked it better. So did I. About 11 months after the first service call, we started talking about living together. Carefully. I stayed at Pam's place often enough that it was already halfway happening. But I didn't want to simply move into her apartment and become another object she had made space for. I told her that. She didn't get defensive. "You want somewhere that feels like ours." "Yeah." She looked around her living room. "I understand." A week later, she sent me 3 listings. Then immediately sent another message. "I know. Very subtle. We spent almost 2 months looking." Pam cared about natural light, layout, storage, and windows. I cared about parking, electrical access, internet options, and whether the utility room was designed by somebody who hated technicians. Eventually, we found a bright apartment with a view toward the river. Not as polished as Pam's old place. Better. It had room for her books, a spare room we could use as an office, and a small corner where I could keep a workbench without being accused of damaging the visual balance of civilization. We signed the lease together. That mattered to me. Not her place. Not mine. Ours. Moving day was a mess. Boxes everywhere. Nobody knew where the coffee filters were. Pam lost the label maker she had insisted would prevent us from losing anything. I waited until the second day before pointing that out. Then I installed the security system. Of course I did. New panel. Door contacts. Motion coverage. Video doorbell. Everything tested properly. Pam stood in the hallway watching me work. Exactly like the first day we met. Except now there were boxes behind her and my jacket hanging beside hers. She pointed toward the motion sensor. "If that thing goes off at 3 in the morning, you're sleeping in the hallway. I'm billing overtime. You live here. After hours rates." She smiled. I ran the final test. Everything came back clean. Green status light. Stable signal. No faults. Pam walked over. "Is it stable?" "Completely." She looked at the panel. Then at me. "Should I call anyway?" I turned around. "Not unless you miss the sound of my knock." She smiled. "I don't have to anymore. You have a key." She held it up between 2 fingers. A simple metal key. Nothing dramatic. But I remembered the first business card I had handed her. The first service ticket. The first time she found an excuse to get me back to her door. Now there was no excuse. No invoice. No system telling either of us when someone was there. Just a key. Later that evening, we ate takeout on the floor because the table still wasn't assembled. Pam complained that I had packed the wrong screws with the legs. I told her I hadn't packed them. She had. She told me that sounded unlikely. I found the bag in a box labeled decorative objects. She refused to apologize. That was our first disagreement in the new place. 5 minutes later, we were laughing. A year earlier, I probably would have looked at everything between us and tried to calculate the risk. Different ages, different careers, different histories, different expectations. Too many variables. Too many things I couldn't guarantee. I still noticed all of them. I just didn't treat them like warning lights anymore. I met Pam because a sensor kept warning her that something was moving outside her door. The first alarm was real. The others were excuses. A year later, she didn't need either one. She had stopped waiting for a system to tell her when she wanted company. And I had stopped pretending every complicated feeling needed to be repaired before I could live with it.